we'll briefly discuss the standard deviation, and we'll show how to calculate the standard deviation for both the sample and population in the TI 8384. The standard deviation is a number that measures how far data values are from their mean. The standard deviation provides a numerical measure of the overall amount of variation in a dataset, and it can be used to determine whether a particular data value is close to or far from the mean. So there's a longer video that describes this whole process and how we find the standard deviation, but for this video we're just going to focus on how to do this in the calculator. So what we will need to do is type these data values into our TI-84. We'll press the stat button and then enter. If there's data value in your lists, we can go ahead and clear it. This is the simplest and fastest way to clear it. Press the up button, highlight the list title, hit clear, and then press back down, and it will clear the data values in the list. This is a nice easy sample. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're asking us to find the sample variance and the sample standard deviation, so we know that this is a sample. We have our data values listed into L1, so we can press stat, hit to the right to find calculate. We're going to calculate one var stats. We only have one variable. In a previous example, I was using a frequency list. This has no frequency list, so we're going to delete that. But if there was a frequency list, which is totally fine, we could have a variable along with this frequency. We could add the frequency list here, and everything else will stay the same. Now we'll press calculate, and we will have both our mean value of x bar and our sample standard deviation s. In the TI 8384, they also put the letter x next to this. This x just represents that this is the standard deviation for the x variable in the calculator. Now our calculator is able to do 2 variable statistics, but for right now we're only dealing with 1 variable statistics. A quick reminder, the standard deviation measures the typical change from the mean. Larger variance or dispersion of data values leads to a larger standard deviation. So there are 2 different types of standard deviations in the calculator. The sample standard deviation is the letter S, but we could also find the population standard deviation. The population standard deviation is the sigma symbol. And you'll notice that the population standard deviation is always a different value than the sample standard deviation. In this case, sigma is 2 and S is 2.16. So the sample standard deviation will always be larger than the population standard deviation. Just be careful when you're using your calculator to find the standard deviation that we're paying attention to the context clues within the question to know whether or not we're looking for the sample standard deviation or the population standard deviation. Now, some of these questions will also ask us to find the variance, as this has. Remember that the sample variance is always in terms of squared units. So to find the sample variance, we need to just square the standard deviation value. There are 2 ways we can do this in the TI-84. The first way we can do this is try to remember as many of these digits as I can. 2.160246899. 2.1602, and I can't remember the rest. I've got a good number of digits in here though. I can press the squared button and press enter, and I'll get that the variance s squared is 4.66646. Let me just fill in what we're talking about here. S is the standard deviation. S squared is the variance. Again, these are both for samples. There is a second way of doing this, which is a little bit more accurate, a little bit more time consuming, but will give you the same results. We can press the vars button, and then use number 5 for statistics. var stands for variables. And from here, we can select either number 3 or number 4, depending up again on the context. Are we using a sample standard deviation, or are we using a population standard deviation? Are we trying to find the sample variance, or are we trying to find the population variance? In this case, we're trying to find the sample variance, so we'll press number 3 and then press squared, and that will use the exact value of the sample standard deviation to find the variance. In this case, we'll find that S squared is 4.6 repeated.